So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed that little cruise on the river. It's a Berlin from all sides tour, so you saw Berlin from the riverside this time. We have, by the way, 500 kilometers of river and canal side in the city, inside Berlin. 500 kilometers are 330 miles inside Berlin. Many canals, the Spree River. The Spree flows into the Havel River in Spandau, so half of the city is Havel River, and the river shapes lakes. Yeah, these are bulges of the rivers, our largest lakes, and we have small lakes, so 50 lakes. So the largest lake in the southeast is 4 kilometers long, the Mügel Lake. We have one in the southwest, the Wannsee Lake. So it's really beautiful. And the more you come out of the central districts, the bigger the districts are, the more water they have, and also the more green areas, forests, and the less densely populated they are. Our central districts are smaller and more densely populated, but Berlin is really very green and has a lot of water. Again, the new central station on your right, over the two glass towers, finished in 2006. My colleague reminded you of the Soccer World Cup that took place in Germany in 2006 when Germany didn't win. I just want to remind you, you are in the country of the world champions, by the way. Yeah, they won this year. And by the way, the fans arrived at the station. You know, we had a lot of public viewing areas, and we go now to the Brandenburg Gate, and we'll stop exactly where the big screen was, right in front of the gate. The entire street of the Brandenburg Gate was blocked for public viewing. Millions of people were coming to see the games, and of course the final one. Against whom we won, by the way? Argentina? No. You also forgot, huh? No, it was Argentina. It was France and Italy who played against each other 2006, and the Italian won that time. Martina is Italian, by the way. Yeah, and under us are these tunnel pipes. 6 tunnels were digged from left to south, going right to the north under the Spree River. And the Spree River in front of the station, right inside, was moved 50 meters northwards, 150 feet to the north, to build one of these tunnels from above. So we have huge construction sites here. All the tunnels are finished under us now. 6 in total: car tunnel, subway tunnel, 4 for the long distance and regional trains. But now, pay attention to Angela Merkel's office. You see the front facade, look right. This is what we call the elephant's washing machine, because we find it looks like it. This is where Angela Merkel rules Germany. Left upstairs, right inside, Federal Chancellery, left upstairs is her office and her apartment, but she doesn't use the apartment much. She lives very close to the Pergamon Museum and Museum Island, and the cabinet is there where she meets the ministers, and in the wings are 500 officials working for her and 450 offices, and it's six times bigger than the White House in Washington. But now we see the Reichstag from the front side. Reich is empire, imperial Dehe. This is what Reichstag actually means, the parliament. Founded in 1871, but the building was built later. And the government withdrew to Weimar, to a small town in Thuringia, because after the First World War was over and lost by the Germans, the November Revolution took place. And here was violence. The communists wanted a socialist republic, but the government repressed the uprising, the revolution, in 1918, and the government came back from Weimar, where they fixed the constitution of a planned republic already, so they proclaimed the Weimar Republic from the left side of the Reichstag building. See it from the front, look left. Weimar Republic, very liberal, women could vote, you know, you had 30 parties, 8 were in the parliament, but hard times economically. Germany had to pay high reparations to the winner nations. United States and England said, pay when you have money, but France didn't. They wanted the money right now, and Germany didn't have any. So finally, the state bank printed the notes and caused a hyperinflation in 1923. So if you would be American citizens of the United States, you would have got 4.5 billion Reichsmarks for $1. 1923, and you needed a wheelbarrow just to buy a bread. And you were poor from one day to another if you had money on your bank account. So that was the year when the Nazis came, not to power, but they were members of the parliament. I sit on the right side of the parliament, and the communists on the left side. Both became more and more successful. You know, new parties, both understood themselves as revolutionaries, promised a lot. The economic situation was awful, especially in 1929, when the worldwide crisis affected Germany a lot. And 32 in November, 38% of the Germans voted for Adolf Hitler. And so the Vice President appointed him being Vice Chancellor in 1933 in January. And a month later, the Reichstag burned. 4 communists were accused of arson, among them a Dutch one who was even sentenced to death. And Hitler had a reason to forbid the Communist Party. So that was the beginning of the end, and he abolished the parliament and established his dictatorship. This is what the Reichstag is connected with. If you look left, you see now the first Russian tanks that reached Berlin in 1945, T-34 tanks. The cannons on your left were made in Germany by Krupp, and they exported them to Soviet Union, and they used the German cannons against Germany in the war. This Russian War Memorial was built right after the Russians won the battle, because you know, Berlin was bombed by the British, Americans, but the Russians conquered the city. They like encircled Berlin with their tanks and cannons and fought the last battles with guns against the Germans. Here at the Brandenburg Gate in front of you, at the Brandenburg Gate and Reichstag happened the last battles, and the Reichstag was Stalin's target in the war because it was in the very center of the city, and it was a political symbol for Germany. So on time, 30th of April, the Russians had the Reichstag conquered and the war was over. In a time when nobody thought of 2 German countries, nobody thought of a wall, so the Russian War Memorial was built on British territory in West Berlin. 45, you know, dedicated, by the way, to more than 20 million Soviet war victims. The Second World War had about 60 million victims in total. And finally was Germany divided into 2 countries in 1949. 1 year after the currency reform happened, and you had a Deutschmark in the west and the DDR mark on the eastern side, plan economy there, free market over there. And it took still time until 1961, but you know, between 45 and 61, when the wall was built, 4 million East Germans chose a better life on the western side. So people had to be forced to do that communist experiment, and the wall was finally built in 61. And here it was right in front of us, in front of the Brandenburg Gate. At the next street, where now a traffic light is, which didn't exist because you couldn't go further, there was the wall, built in 61, in front of the Brandenburg Gate, which was to be seen behind a wall, but it was a no man's land, also from the eastern side not accessible, because behind the wall was, and behind the gate was an iron fence. There was space of 300 feet in between a wall and an iron fence behind. So the Brandenburg Gate stood finally all alone in no man's land, and you couldn't go there, you couldn't touch it, you couldn't go through. So it was very exciting when you could do that first after the wall came down in 1989. The wall in front of the gate was extremely wide. When we later see the original wall, you will see it was actually thin, with a pipe on top. East German water pipes cut in halves. The half pipes were made slippery with grease that you couldn't climb across so easily. But here were 2 panels laid down, others put on top and even coated. So it was tank safe, very solid, wide enough to stand on top. This is what people did in the end of 1989 when the wall came down, standing here on top of the wall at the Brandenburg Gate. Nowhere else they could stand on the wall, only here. That were the pictures that you saw on TV. But the Brandenburg Gate is actually very old. It's from 1791, and it's the last of 18 city gates which were built like the Propylaeas in Athens, and it was from here an entrance into the old town. Right and left from the gate was the city wall, the old city wall, and there were other gates, and behind Alexander Square where the TV tower is, 3 kilometers behind the gate, the city wall closed. So Berlin was very small until the late 19th century, but then suburbs were created for all those workers who came to find jobs at the big companies here. They had to build them apartments outside. So suburbs were encircling old Berlin, which were incorporated in the late 19th century, so that's why the old city wall was pulled down. Only the Brandenburg Gate was not pulled down late 19th century. There was no handicap for the traffic. The horse carriages could still go through, so that the double-decker buses in the 1920s and the tram was going in front of it from right to left. It's in the very center of the city now. And it's the only of these 18 city gates which is still there. Pretty much original, it was not much destroyed in the war. The quadriga on top was a lot. On top is a victory goddess, Victoria, with 4 horses. We call it, because of the quadro, 4 horses, quadriga. It was built like a Roman military team. And the original was once taken as a war trophy. By whom? By Napoleon, who once came through 1806. He came from here, through the gate into Berlin to conquer Berlin and Prussia. And then the Prussian army had to go with the French against Russia. And in 1812, the Prussians changed their mind only and joined the enemy, joined the Russians, Austrians and British, and together they finally defeated Napoleon. And then the Prussian army brought the quadriga back to Berlin, and Paris was occupied, and the Prussian army came back through the gate into the city. Ever since the square behind the gate is Paris Square, because Paris was occupied 1814 already, and the wars for liberty were over 1815. But the quadriga on top was destroyed in the war. What you see is a copy of the post-war time. And all the other buildings on Paris Square got lost in the war. They were beautiful palaces of the villas of the heroes of the wars for liberty. There was a French embassy in the 19th century. Embassy of the United States moved over in the 1930s, and State Embassy of the United States until 1941. And then the buildings were bombed. So it was an empty space, and the Brandenburg Gate was there all alone. When the wall came down, Paris Square was rebuilt, so it's very modern around the gate. Only the height limit is the same, so the buildings are all not higher than the Brandenburg Gate. Brandenburg Gate was like a measure for the height limit for the buildings in the inner city, not higher than 66 feet. So the French embassy is behind the gate, exactly what it was in the 19th century already, and the Embassy of the United States is exactly what it was until 1941, a big modern building, which was finished there about 7 years ago now. We have now a break at the Brandenburg Gate that you can take photos and look around, but we need to agree about a time. We stay here at Street of June 17th with our bus, and I suggest that you all come back, that we meet at 5 o'clock, so in total 20 minutes, because it takes time to go there and back, take photos. And again, we have a shopping break in the end of the tour in the very west of the city, also for souvenirs, so you don't need to waste time with souvenirs here, yeah? Just if it's really very necessary. But on time, 5 o'clock, we continue. I can guide you through the gate if you like.
Sí. Que tenemos 20 minutos, a las 5 de la tarde volver. No es necesario hacer shopping acá porque al final vamos a otro lado, claro. Cuidado, 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 cuidado. Pero del otro lado mejor, ¿o no?
We could do it during the 1 hour shopping break. Ah bah oui, c'était le mur.
Pies al mar, pies al mar. perdió. Mira, la señora, la niña con silla de ruedas.
Sí,
Es de
está en el 8.
En el 8, el 9 debe estar al lado.
Ya apareció su pez. Gracias. Como que nos perdimos el grupo, no veo el 9. Ah, sí. Pero aquí estáis como libres, ¿no? Cada uno hace sus cosas. Ah, sí. Sí. Ya volvemos como a acordar ahí está allá en la bodega. Ahí, aquí ensayó ahora lo saco yo. Porque no las fotos desde una perspectiva distinta. Nunca le saco las cosas de arriba ya. Ya. Nos filmamos mutuamente. No entiendo para acá.
No, las puertas de Brandenburgo.
Esto es este. Yo creí que lo habían como la mitad, ¿no? De la mitad para allá es oeste.
No, claro. Claro, sí que sí.
Y esto es este.
Esto es pero esto, la puerta de Brandenburgo fue tierra de nadie, porque había un muro que lo separaba del lado occidental y había como 300 pies hasta la otra reja y entre medio estaba la puerta de Brandenburgo. Entonces lo que estaba allá era manejado por Gran Bretaña y justo había, no sé si vieron el monumento a los soldados soviéticos,
Sí,
donde había unos tanques, unos cañones, quedó justo en el lado británico ese monumento.
Entonces ahora estamos en Berlín del Este. Sí. Oriental. Sí. Porque 300 no sé cuánto.
300 pies son como 100 metros, una cuadra.
Entonces caminemos para decir que estuvimos en el... Era bien difícil arrancar, ¿eh? Casi imposible. ¿Dónde está ese monumento o algo que es un memorial? Y ahí hay fotos del muro y cuando lo echaron abajo, todo.
En Berlín.
H&M.
Ahí hay otro. Como bicicletas, me parece.
Parece. Quedan 10 minutos. Quedan 10 minutos.
Hasta las 5. 10 minutos más. Bueno, alcanzamos a caminar ahí.
No, yo creo que me parece que esto es ya
Oriental.
Sí, porque aquí cambia el pavimento.
Y dicen que el este quedó más atrasado.
Creo que estamos por, sí, vamos por la calle.
Los patúos.
Vamos, vamos. Aquí sí se las roban, por eso las ponen por condado. La embajada gringa, la embajada francesa.
Por aquí entraron desfilando. Allá.
Claro, si lo ya. Sí. Ahora desfilamos nosotros.
Desfila.
Ahí va. Complejo de San Martín,
A la carga. Yeah, yes. Yeah, it's horrible.
Esta es la línea del muro. No, veces. Cuidado.
Está rojo. A ver, de aquí está rojo. Ahí está.
Está en español.
Gorbachev tear down this wall. 2 years before the wall came down, he was here, invited by the West Berlin government for the 750th anniversary of Berlin. Also Mitterrand and Margaret Thatcher were here, but Ronald Reagan held that famous speech at the Brandenburg Gate, which was still locked on the Soviet sector. So you saw the Embassy of the United States, it's again on your left. It's a huge building actually, again, exactly what it was before the war, until 1941. And the wall continued left from us, and now was 300 feet further left, parallel, a second wall. Right at the Brandenburg Gate was an iron fence instead of a second wall, but here, 300 feet left was a second wall. In between was space, which was no man's land in between two walls. But when the wall came down, you had space in the middle of the city. Where would you find space in the middle of the city? In New York, in London, here in Berlin you had that. It attracted a lot of architects who built modern architecture. But here, the federal state of Berlin saved the land to build the Holocaust Memorial. It's now in the middle of the city. Look left. If you look left, you see the Holocaust Memorial, which was finished 2005 by Peter Eisenman from the United States. Himself Jewish, an architect. He was chosen out of 500 architects and artists, and made the ground waving and put cobblestone on the ground and built these 2,711 concrete blocks left and side. 2,711. The number doesn't have a certain significance, not an official at least. So it has 2,711 blocks, and from above, because the blocks have a different height each, from above it looks like waves. Now, to show the ups and downs in a Jewish destiny, that's what he said. But one has to take it as an artwork, so when you walk through you feel undisquieted, unsecure, because you walk on waves, on cobblestone, you get lost within the blocks, and the grey color leaves something depressing on you. This is the idea. It's dedicated to the 6 million Jewish Europeans who were murdered by the Nazis. Underneath is the actual documentation center about the Holocaust. So people would see how many Jewish people lived in which European country. The presumption for the Nazis when they did the final solution of the Jewish question in 1942 were 11 million, and they still counted the British Jews because they were convinced they would defeat England, but also the Jews from neutral countries like from Sweden and Spain countries which were together with Germany in the Second World War: Japan, Italy, Bulgaria, Croatia, Finland, Austria-Hungary. All those Jews were counted. So finally were about 6 million killed. And in the room of names underneath in the documentation center, you could listen to short biographies of every single victim. And the biographies are just in English and German and short. But if you would listen to all of them, it would take you more than 6 years. Yeah. The entrance is in the next side street to the left, so the documentation center is underneath. So, and yeah, look, the Holocaust Memorial, and very close to this, ladies and gentlemen, this is where Adolf Hitler committed suicide. So it was right from us was the back of the Reichs-Chancellery. So the Reichs-Chancellery, the so-called new one, which was built in 1939 by Albert Speer, Hitler's favorite architect, is now not existing anymore. Of course not. It was bombed and the ruins were pulled down. There are now East German apartment blocks with the red roofs on top. In front of you and right inside you see them. Can you see behind the trees? There are so apartment blocks with red roofs, and that is exactly where the Reichs-Chancellery was. We would see the back facade, and there was another one in front from right to the right. So it made a right angle. And here the side street, to your right. On the left side is a parking space. Underneath was the bunker where Hitler committed suicide. On that April 1945, exactly 30th of April, when the Russians conquered the Reichstag. But the Russians didn't know where the bunker was, not yet. In the afternoon, 3 p.m., Hitler committed suicide. He had Eva Braun married one day before, and they both took poison, and Hitler still shot at himself. And the Goebbels family was in his bunker. Joseph Goebbels, his propaganda minister. His propaganda ministry was also here at Wilhelm Street. We were about to cross that former main government street, which was very much bombed. But Goebbels' propaganda ministry was here, and he and his wife Magda and their 6 children were all in Hitler's bunker the very last days. And Magda Goebbels killed her own children at night while they were sleeping with poisonous pills. She didn't want her children growing up in a different world than a National Socialist one, and just killed her own children. And then Magda and Joseph Goebbels were shooting at each other in front of the entrance of the bunker, 1st of May 45, when the Russians put their flag on top of the Reichstag, which was very close, but still they didn't know where the bunker was. And then they found it, and the corpses were still good to be identified. Partly burned, but good to be identified. Only Hitler's corpse couldn't be found. So just teeth and jaw bones. And so they looked up for his dentist, who was still around, and he could confirm, yes, these are Hitler's teeth. And that was the only evidence about his death in the bunker. And nobody knew what they did with the corpses. It came to the public in the 1990s only. So the rest of the corpses were brought to another city in East Germany, to Magdeburg. And in the 1970s, the corpses were burnt, and the ashes is now in a river near the city of Magdeburg. But Hitler's teeth and jaw bones are still in Moscow, still existing. This is the story. And the bunker was blown up in 1947. So there's nothing but a parking space today. This was the old bank quarter of Berlin. The buildings right and left belonged to the German bank before the war, but it was used then by the Ministry for the Interior of East Germany. Onto the building with a red facade on your right was a bank, Fürstenberg, Jewish, still in the late 19th century, when many banks were owned by Jews and were all expropriated under the Nazi regime. And now we come to Friedrich Street and cross it. It's a very centrally situated shopping street with new blocks like Galerie Lafayette on your right, with a glass facade. Galerie Lafayette right inside, built by Jean Nouvel, a French architect. And this is all East Berlin, but this center here developed a very attractive neighborhood, because also historical sites are in walking distance. So on the way to Tequanchali, I would like to show you the Janda Market, the most beautiful square of the city. If you look right, you see buildings of the Janda Market already. The small building on your right, with the red roof, is a French church, small little Calvinist church. Calvinists are like Presbyterians, you know, they don't have an altar, they don't have a painting, you have to concentrate on the sermon. And the kings who were ruling here in Prussia were Calvinists. And the Huguenots from France were also Calvinists or Protestants, and were not allowed to believe into their Protestant religion in France anymore. Under Ludwig XIV, they were like expelled and came here and brought development, brought culture, taught Berliners how to eat with knife and fork properly, brought culture here, cuisine recipes. So the French are very important. Got that small little French church in 1705. And the tower on your right was added 80 years later. It was called the French Cathedral, but it had just been a tower on your right. French Cathedral, and in front of you, in the distance, you see the German Cathedral next to a German church. The small one with the dome on top was a Lutheran German church, also built in 1705. So the French and German churches were built first 1705, and then later, 80 years later, were the two towers added. And in the middle of right, you see the concert house, which was actually built as a theater, 1821. And where the Robbers by Friedrich Schiller were performed. You saw the statue in front. It's depicting the German poet Friedrich Schiller, who also wrote Ode to the Joy, Beethoven's Ninth. Niccolo Paganini played the violin here, and Richard Wagner conducted his Flying Dutchman. But in the 1920s, Marlene Dietrich stood on stage, Lily Palmer, Asta Nielsen, very famous theater. But short before the end of the war was the Janda Market, very much destroyed. And the theater was reopened as a concert house in 1984. So the East German government invested and had that reconstructed. It's a gorgeous, very beautiful concert hall inside. Concert house now. Gendarme Market, because the French, who also set it down here, had a regiment which was called Gendarme, French for guards. It's called Gendarme Market because the regiment had their stables here. It smelled bad, nothing was to be seen. Market was here. That's why Gendarme Market. Most beautiful square of the city.
Se ve como Berlín del Este. Se ve como Berlín comunista. Todo igual.
So now we come back to the street, Friedrichstraße, which is actually a very attractive shopping street. So all these new blocks, among them Galerie Lafayette, were built in the 1990s only.
It's very warm. Just nice. Main Street. Main Street. Very hot, I'm never hot. Yeah. I like her.
This Friedrich Street, this is it. And Friedrich Street was divided into an eastern and western part. We are on the eastern part, still on the former East Berlin side. By Checkpoint C like Charlie, that was the division of Friedrich Street. And checkpoint C, like Charlie, divided the Soviet sector from the American sector. So you would have visited West Berlin. You would have flown into West Berlin and would have landed at airport Tempelhof, and then you wanted to visit East Berlin. So you would go to checkpoint Charlie, you could purchase a 5 Deutschmark day visa, and you had to change 25 East German marks into 25 Deutschmarks, which was definitely not the real rate at that time, but you had to change it. And you would have visited East Berlin, you would have seen the Pergamon Museum, and now you would come back. And you would stand in a line here on your right already, and the guards, East German guards, would come into the bus and would ask for passports. And then they would let us, hopefully, back to the American sector in front of us. Here on your left, they would have checked you up to get to the other side, where we come from. But the East German checkpoint houses are gone. So only in front of you, you see the checkpoint on the former American side, and you see the copy of the little American checkpoint house. Look left. Left-hand side, you see the little copy of the first American checkpoint house, which was here with sandbags in front, where now concrete is inside that nobody carries them away. And there are young men pretending being American guards, taking money for being photographed. So it's a very touristic point. Why? There were 9 checkpoints, and all are gone. Just checkpoint Charlie became a museum, because it was the only one for foreigners. So you all would have taken checkpoint Charlie. West Berliners and Germans, West Germans, were not allowed to cross checkpoint Charlie. They had other checkpoints. But many people in the world had that experience of being checked up at checkpoint Charlie, and that's why it was known, and it was very popular, and so it became a kind of open-air museum. We have also a wall museum there that documents the 28-year tragedy of the wall, very interesting. And there are many souvenir shops, you know, it's a big touristic place. The documentation of the wall, how it looks now, or how it used to look when it was a real wall, that is right behind us. You see there depictions on a fence. This is checkpoint Charlie, and we have a photo stop here again, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, also not again. So
el puesto de control entre la frontera de Estados Unidos y la soviética. ¿Vamos a ver el muro?
Ya.
Vamos a ver el muro. Por ahí, el muro. Allá.
So, Checkpoint Charlie is the one place in this tour we're in a very, very safe city. The one place
Mirar, porque las bicis nos advirtieron.
Pasemos.
¡Mira! ¿Qué pasa ahí? Ok, también hay. No, voy a decir que me tomaron una foto, pero no me entiendo. Me sacan la foto ahí y ya se me va a agotar la tía.
¿Te la saco? Yo te la saco.
¿Tú no?
¿No?
Ich will mal ganz kurz was sagen.
Quedan 7 minutos.
Me quedan 5 minutos apenas.
7.
¿Dónde está el bus?
für 17:30 haben wir es. Hier gibt es jetzt die aktuelle von Sigma. Nobody to Love heißt sie. Und er ist von Sigma. Das hier ist das Stück hier weiter. Hier ist mit Lage.
The main wall was left parallel where the line of cobblestone marks it, so the sidewalk on the left and the buildings were on Western territory. We would be on East German ground already, and there was still a second wall right parallel on the sidewalk. So here in a shorter distance to each other. And when you come back next time, you do a sightseeing tour by driving a Trabant car, a Trabi, 26 horsepower, 2 strokes. It's really fun. In East Germany it was not really funny because you had to apply for it and you waited 14 years to get one car. You see them again on your right, the Trabant cars, the Trabi, right hand side. And people now enjoy the Trabi safaris and go on their own in a Trabi. It's fun to drive it, you really feel the street under you. And they definitely couldn't compete with the Mercedes cars. That was another reason for the wall was built, to be protected from the free market, because they for sure couldn't compete with Mercedes cars. And in '61 were the Western cars better already. That's why the East Germans left to the West and escaped. So amongst the Eastern Bloc countries, they had an own economical exchange. They couldn't change the East German currencies and Eastern Bloc currencies and the Western currencies, so what should they do? Mercedes cars were not available, so they had to buy a Trabant. Now they can buy a Mercedes, and nobody buys a Trabant anymore, so it's not produced anymore. And that, you know, a lot of factories in East Germany went bankrupt and were closed, and a lot of East Germans became unemployed after the wall came down. And they had to be supported with the employment money of the unemployment insurance, and that cost a lot of money also. And we have still these differences also in Berlin and in entire Germany. Sometimes a very high unemployment rate in East Germany, 20% in some places. Berlin has 12% unemployment rate, but on average is Germany doing very well. Average is 6% unemployment rate in Germany, that's good. So we're about to cross Wilhelm Street, which was the main government street in the end under Hitler's reign. And across the street right hand side there's a huge grey complex. This was the Ministry for Aviation, built in 1936. Hermann Göring was Minister for Aviation and he had his office there. It was not bombed in the war, on purpose not bombed, in order to save documents that could be evidences for the trials of Nuremberg. So it survived the war, and it's now Ministry for Finances with 2,200 offices. Across the street right, the huge grey building from 1936. And left, across the street left, there's now a big empty space. There was the Gestapo and SS headquarters under the Nazis. That address which people were most afraid of, and where many anti-fascists tortured and then brought to concentration camps. But the buildings are not existing anymore. We have an exhibition on the Nazi regime on the territory, where also the wall is to be seen. Look left. This is where we stop again, that you can take a photo of this piece of the wall. Left hand side, it's a regional, had never been pulled down. Only people came after the wall came down and chiseled out pieces, so it has big holes. Had to be fenced in to keep it as a war memorial. This is how the wall actually looked in the end. Panels from concrete and then pipe on top. East German water pipes cut in halves. The half pipes were added and were made slippery with grease that you couldn't climb across so easily. And behind were the underground chambers of the Gestapo and SS headquarters uncovered. And on the ground further left behind us is a new building with an exhibition on the Nazi regime. The building next door, left hand side, was the Museum for Arts and Crafts, which was rebuilt after the war. The building on your left is now Martin Gropius building for changing exhibitions, and people queuing up for a David Bowie exhibition because he was in Berlin for a couple of years in the 1970s. And across the street on your right you see what was the House of Representatives of Prussia, Göring used it as a house of pilots and had his own wedding here. The building on your right was not destroyed in the war and is now the House of Representatives of the Federal State of Berlin again. So here we stop for the wall, that you can take a photo of the wall memorial behind us. It's only we are parking on the wrong side because it's a dead-end street. I'm sorry for that. So when you get off on the right, Martina help out at the door, be careful and turn to the left to the sidewalk.
Der wichtigste Knopf geht ziemlich früh. Wenn es liegt, da noch dreimal nachgucken. Ich habe einmal gefragt, ist es irgendwas...
Oye, que no vamos a alcanzar a caminar hasta el final y devolvernos. Es como bajar aquí, tomar la foto y irnos.
¿Son esos ladrillos?
No sé.
¿Para qué? Memorial. Llegar al lado este.
No, allá es el oeste.
Este es el este. Para que no se arrancaran.
¿Salí?
Yo puedo salir así, mira.
Yo no entiendo por qué tengo que comprar estudios. Que digas no tocaste. Yo vi un caballero que saltó. Un caballero saltó por debajo y tocó.
¿Vamos?
Là, je vois, c'est un peu au bout, là, je l'ai pris sur la base. Ah, ouais, ouais. C'est vraiment même pas fini, pas épais.
¿Vamos?
Mais c'est tout, là, on voit tout le même.
Excuse me.
Yes, but I mean,
Estos serían puestos de vigilancia, fue tanto ladrillo ahí. O edificios que demolieron, como dice el papá de
Shrek.
Es gibt eigentlich Zusammenhang.
Los muertos, estos había montones antiguamente.
Probably because a lot of them were shot in the 60s. Not all shootings shot.
Por acá.
It was like curving through the city. Left is a line of cobblestone on the street, and it turns right, and we also turn right and stay on former no man's land. The wall was strictly built according to district borders, and these district borders weren't straight. So that's why it was like curving through the city. Left or still the cobblestone line.
Ahí va la línea del muro. Que ahí va, estamos siguiendo la línea del muro. Está por ahí.
So we would still be in between two walls and come now to Potsdam Square. On your left you see a new complex, Potsdamer Platz, Potsdam Square, which was actually built in the late 19th century with buildings from the promotion period. Here were hotels, cafes, restaurants. The crossing in front of you was the biggest traffic junction in Germany, one of the biggest everywhere in Europe. And the first traffic light was set up here in 1924. Siemens developed it. You have a copy of it. If you look left, you see there a green tower. Left hand side comes a green tower up with a clock on it and the traffic lights horizontally shown. But in the book stood still a policeman and changed the colors finally manual. But that was needed. 1924. Look left. First European traffic light as a copy, the green tower with a clock left hand side. And then was everything bombed in the war? The wall was built in 1961. Nobody would have invested so close to the wall. It was unattractive. Only after the wall came down, it was the very center of the city again. And then the value of the land increased a lot, and private investors bought it and built offices, apartments. So we crossed the former border now. Right inside are still panels of the wall, right? Panels of the wall on the side. And the complex on your left, this is Daimler-Benz investment from the 1990s. 50% offices, 20% apartments, 30% for other purposes, cinemas, a shopping mall. And look right, you see the Sony Center on your right, which was built by Helmut Jahn with a roof on top of an oval-shaped part, which looks like Mount Fuji in Japan from a distance. The Sony boss wanted that. Sony Electronics invested on your right, and the architect came from Chicago, Helmut Jahn, he had that built on your right, finished in 2001. And if you look carefully, you see a giraffe from Lego stones, right hand side. Look right, a giraffe from Lego stones. Behind is Legoland, underneath, very interesting exhibition, sites from Lego stones. And further left is an ochre-colored building, left hand side. This is the musical theater. In February are the competition films of the film festival shown in it. February, the film festival takes place here, the Berlinale. Last February was George Clooney here, who presented his film Monument Men. He presented that. Matt Damon and Kate Blanchett were coming. So in February they'll go to LA. Hollywood is in Berlin. February every year. So that's always here at Potsdam Square. 27 new cinemas were built here. A lot of cinemas were closed on the western side. A big competitor of the western inner city where we go now. Left you see a complex that we call the New Culture Forum. The grey building behind the trees was left inside the Museum for Musical Instruments. But the very first building here was Berlin Philharmonic's Hall from 1963. That is the yellow building on your left, the big one left. The Philharmonic Hall from 1963, built by Hans Scharoun, Bauhaus architect, very interesting, modern, the acoustic is very good. Herbert von Karajan conducted the Philharmonic Orchestra. Now Sir Simon Rattle from Great Britain conducts it. And the smaller yellow building left is the New Chamber Music Hall, added in 1987. The red building coming up on your left is the Museum for Arts and Crafts, dresses from all over the centuries and Rococo mirror cabinets, and this is what you see in the Museum for Arts and Crafts. And after the wall came down, 1999 was still a new painting gallery added. Behind the trees there are some flat buildings with glass roofs left inside. This is the new painting gallery with 1,800 paintings of European masters. Gainsborough from Great Britain, Watteau from France, Caravaggio, Carracci, Titian from Italy, the Germans, Rubens, Rembrandt. All painted by painters whose paintings you would always also see in the Louvre. Here's really a lot to be seen in Berlin, the new painting gallery. The green building on your left is the Austrian embassy. Here near the gorgeous Tiergarten, recreation park on your right, were embassies which were destroyed in the war, and in the 1990s were new embassies built, and they all moved from Bonn to Berlin when Berlin became the capital of Germany again. India, the red building on your left is the Indian embassy, then follows South Africa with a beige facade left hand side, and the new Turkish embassy comes up on your left. And two embassies that were actually built for countries which were together with Germany in the Second World War survived the war. The pink villa on your left was a present of Hitler to Mussolini in 1941, and it's again the Italian embassy, left hand side. The same with Japan. Coming up to your left you see the Japanese embassy, which was already built in 1941, and it's again the Japanese embassy, left hand side. Here were also private houses. You know, if you read a bestseller, a book in that appeared in the United States, the Eric Larson book, In the Gardens of Beasts, he describes this district, the Garden of Animals, Tiergarten, in the 1930s. And then we still see the Saudi Arabian embassy on your left here, that we call the oil barrel, left hand side. Also in the street to your left you would find many new embassies. Some were built exactly where they were before the war, so they bought land back. Here were empty spaces on your left until the wall came down, a long time. Also after the wall came down we had empty spaces, and now we have many embassies here. Berlin became the capital of the reunified Germany in 1990. Little bit more than 50% of the Germans decided to have Berlin back as a capital. Bonn could have stayed the capital, you know. That's a little small town actually, and now one decided to have Berlin back, which is within former East Germany, actually quite far in the east, but it has that long tradition as a German capital. So the parliament is here, we saw the Reichstag, the old became the new parliament again, the federal chancellery, the White House for the federal president. Ministries moved over, and so did the embassies. And you see the victory column again. right inside the Victory Column, right inside from 1873. Behind the green facades on your left are northern embassies. Sweden and Finland bought the old land back. Swedish embassy was built from birch wood, like some IKEA furnitures, and Finland has a sauna right in the foyer. Very interesting modern architecture behind the green facades, left hand side. Right inside you see the South Korean embassy, right inside, South Korea. And we cross the Landwehrkanal again. So everything in front of you, in the beginning actually we came from this direction in front. And everything here behind the canal didn't belong to Berlin until 1920. So we would have left the city before 1920. Yeah, we are on the way to the western inner city, to Kurfürstendamm, that you still have time for shopping. Kurfürstendamm is our main shopping and amusement mile in the western inner city, an elegant boulevard which was built in the late 19th century after the model of the Champs-Élysées in Paris. And some of the beautiful old buildings are left, the modern buildings were added after the war just recently. On the way you will see our zoo. We have actually 2 zoos in Berlin. We have everything double and twice, 2 national galleries, 3 opera houses, 4 universities. It costs us a fortune of tax money. And we have also 2 zoos. Only the monkeys move from east to west, but we have still 2 zoos. And the Western Zoo in the western inner city is the oldest zoo in Germany. It was opened in 1844, at that time outside of the city in the Garden of Animals. Look right, the aquarium. Look right, this is the aquarium with the dinosaur reliefs outside, but there are no dinosaurs inside, but crocodiles and snakes and tarantulas and scorpions and little sharks, piranhas, 60,000 water animals in the aquarium. And further right, you see the actual entrance to the zoo with the white elephants. Bus number 8 is disturbing the view. So further right would be the White Elephant's Gate, which is made in an Asian style. 1844 is the entrance to the zoo. 17,000 animals, and our monkeys are really worth to see. Like Ivo the gorilla, the silverback, who was brought here to make babies, but he was not very successful until now. Kevin, an orang-utan, was brought from a circus. Kevin's job in the circus arena was to smoke. And then the poor monkey was brought in the big box and was not let out of a box and couldn't walk anymore. So when Berlin bought Kevin, the orang-utan, it took him 8 years to learn walking. And he's now in a good health, very old, but sometimes he grabs with a long finger through the cage to grab cigarettes when he finds some. He's still addicted. And East Berlin Zoo is far in the east with a beautiful Baroque palace in it and beautiful tree alleys. It's also very beautiful with 8,000 animals, but the zoo here has 17,000. Look right, now you see the Elephant's Gate, right, with the green roofs right inside, Asian style from 1844. Not all of the buildings survived the war. Also animals died, 90 were left out of 10,000 animals. And walking through the ruins of Berlin after the war. So now we come to first Townsend Street, which is already a shopping street, but we stop at Kurfürstendamm. And Townsend Street is the KaDeWe, which is actually the biggest department store in Europe, with the 6th floor, which is the biggest delicatessen department, one of the biggest in the world. But that's a very big department store, and there are not many souvenir shops closed, so we decided to stop somewhere else where the Hard Rock Cafe is, where other department stores that have supermarkets, there are drugstores, we have Christmas decoration, if you like that. We have a gorgeous shop with big nutcrackers in front of it, all handmade, all valuable things for collecting. This is that is where we stopped. This very, very nice shop. Even if you don't buy anything, it would be worth to see. Shoe shops, yeah, also. in department store you get that. But first have a look at least to the KaDeWe. On your left you see the KaDeWe with a red roof. Left hand side there's a big building with a red roof. Left, this is the Kaufhaus des Westens, department store of the West, which is a very big one, bigger than Harrods in London, bigger than Galeries Lafayette in Paris. The sculpture here in the middle of the street on your left is called Berlin and shows the four former sectors of the city. Dancing spaghetti called by Berliners. This is, that could be already in walking distance, maybe a little far, but still have a look. Saturn on your right is a big market for electronics. Adidas on your left. But I'm afraid it's still too far from where we stop. You see the Emperor William Memorial Church in front of you. Look, this is a ruin of a church from 1895, which was built to commemorate the first emperor. That's why Emperor William Memorial Church, a new Romanesque style, much bigger than it looks now, because just a ruin of it was preserved after the war to remind of the ravages of the war. And then two new parts were added in 1961. So a bell tower on your right and the actual modern church behind the ruin. But this ruin on your right is a very famous site, and it's the Emperor William Memorial Church, and you could go inside. It's still open, it's partly scaffolded, but right hand side is an entrance, and you could see original mosaics and photographs on the old church if you like to do that. That is in walking distance. On the right hand side is a big tower to be seen. It comes up in a second. On your right you will see a high tower. It's our new Waldorf Astoria hotel. It's the 5th in Europe and the 1st in Germany. Coming up to your right you see Waldorf Astoria hotel. Also West Berlin renews itself because it is in competition to East Berlin. And everything is new in East Berlin. Restaurants closed here, moved over to the east because they didn't want to pay the high prices here anymore. So there's a little competition, and now they invest a lot also here in the west of the city. This is the beginning of Kurfürstendamm, as we call it, or short Kudamm. Kurfürst is Elector's Road, because it was nothing but a riding path. That's why Kurfürstendamm. It's actually 1.8 miles long, built in the late 19th century, outside of the city at that time, to connect Berlin behind us with the villa quarters in front of us. And it was in the 1920s famous for its literature cafes and variety theaters. Marlene Dietrich met her friends, and all the Berlin artists, intellectuals met in the cafes. Josephine Baker performed in a variety theater, and the story of cabaret plays here. That happened here. Left hand side, look, Käthe Wohlfahrt. Left hand side, the love with the Champs-Élysées in Paris and wanted such a beautiful boulevard near his new founded imperial building. Here on your left behind the tree is a beautiful facade, left hand side behind the tree. And we see more and more old facades. They all had English front yards. Each house at the corner a little dome on top or tower on top. They all had the little gardens or cafes in front. Left you see Boulevard Theatres, the theatre at Kurfürstendamm, left hand side, and comedy at Kurfürstendamm. Left, there were Boulevard Theatres in the 1920s where Marlene Dietrich stood on stage. Do you remember Marlene Dietrich, by the way? She was born in Berlin in 1901. She would have said no, that was in 1904 only. We know that better, and she spent her last years in Paris. Only after she died, she came back to Berlin. Her sarcophagus was brought back and she's buried here now. But you know, before she went to Hollywood, after her first success, her first film was shown here on Kurfürstendamm. Before she went to Hollywood, she was here in the cafes and played in the theaters in Berlin. Not so famous, but very busy in the 1920s. Side roles and silent films. And in 1930 was The Blue Angel performed first. Here on Kurfürstendamm in a cinema called the Gloria Palace. And she had signed a contract with the Paramount already. So after the premiere, she went to the next train station up to Bremerhaven and then across the Atlantic Ocean. And when she arrived in New York, she was already world famous. And von Sternberg, who discovered her here in Berlin, he was actually a Hollywood director already, film director. He made her a star by the right light, by the right makeup, by the right dresses. And she played with Gary Cooper and John Wayne, and finally entertained the American GIs, American soldiers who fought against Germany. She entertained them. And see Billy Wilder's Foreign Affair from 1948. This film plays in Berlin. You see the ruins of Berlin was made here, and Marlene Dietrich is singing in the bar for the American militaries. Foreign Affair, Billy Wilders, who was in Berlin, by the way. Billy Wilders was born in Krakow. He was Polish, Jewish, and he made it to Vienna with Fred Zinnemann, by the way, and then they came to Berlin. He began as a scriptwriter, and after the Reichstag's burning, he left to Hollywood. So short after Hitler came to power in 1934 and made career there. Bertolt Brecht was another famous theater director whose Three-Penny Opera was performed in Berlin 1929, big success, or Mahagoni, with a famous music by Kurt Weill. And Kurt Weill was Jewish, famous composer, and both emigrated to the United States when Hitler came to power. And Bertolt Brecht had problems because he was depending on the German language. Came back after the war and made career in East Berlin, East Germany. And Kurt Weill became a film musician, very famous. But you know, a lot of these famous artists, film directors, actors and actresses started in Berlin. Kurfürstendamm, here they met in the 1920s. Thomas Wolfe was here. Thomas Wolfe, who's still alive, yeah, he lives near the Central Park of New York, but he was in Berlin in the 1920s already and said the Kurfürstendamm in Berlin is the longest cafe house in Europe. And think of Cabaret, if I'm allowed to remind you of another film made in 1972 by Bob Fosse, Cabaret, with Liza Minnelli. And the film bases on a book by Christopher Isherwood, who was a British author and who came to Berlin in the late 1920s and met Jean Ross. That was the real name of that young emancipated American girl. And the story was written down, you saw it in Cabaret, and the book is Goodbye to Berlin. He left when the Nazis came to power, short before already, to the United States. Christopher Isherwood wrote the story for Cabaret. It's a true story that happened here. Berlin was a very cultivated and liberal city in the 1920s. Berlin was actually the cultural capital. And if you think that 50% of the Jewish marriages were mixed marriages, so one didn't care much about Jewish or not Jewish, Germany's achievements are not thinkable without, actually. So that's also for us, the following generations, very difficult to understand that barbarism could happen afterwards with Hitler's dictatorship for the 12 years. You know, when he came to power, was everything closed which was in Jewish hands, and that was a lot. They had variety theaters, they ran restaurants where artists, writers, film directors, and they left, could still emigrate. Many died in the Holocaust, and it became very boring in Berlin when Hitler came to power in the 1930s. And after the war was not much left. You know, the city was very much destroyed. Kurfürst and we left it already, lost beautiful old houses, and new ones were built after the war. But that is to be seen everywhere in the city, a lot of post-war architecture. But still the very homogeneous architecture of the late 19th century. When Berlin grew so amazingly because of the successful industrialization of the promotion period. Still in the time of the monarchy, in the time of the emperors, with low income taxes, they encouraged a lot of people to establish enterprises. They went bankrupt, started again. That was the late 19th century. So many workers came, 10,000s of them arrived every day here in Berlin. Came from everywhere in Germany, from the countryside, from villages, to find jobs, and they found jobs at Siemens. Borsig was a big steel producer. AEG, not to forget, the famous Berlin brand. You might know the refrigerators and the washing machines. It's a Berlin brand. Emil Rathenau, the founder, bought patents at Edison in New York and electrified entire Berlin when electricity was new. Electrical light was very new at that time. So the workers found jobs, and one had to build them apartments, which were not there. You know, this is the typical architecture, right and left, from the promotion period. The front houses have these stucco facades and had the more exclusive apartments, and then they built back houses because the former house owners had to pay taxes for front houses only, so they built to the back as far as they could. And they had 10 back houses built, and then the last 2 ones were manufactories. And in the middle back houses lived the workers' families. And when they couldn't provide enough living room for the workers in the beginning, 11 people lived in 2 rooms. Awful situation, of course. Epidemic spread. So physicians worked hard on avoiding epidemics. That's why the bacteriology was actually founded in Berlin. And Robert Koch finally discovered the tubercle bacterium and got the Nobel Prize 1901. Robert Koch was a Berlin physician. Yeah, and then when they had enough room, Berlin became very successful. High tax money could be paid. So the research was supported by the state. The Emperor William Societies for Physics, Mathematics were founded. And also the Orient Society was founded in 1898. Big factories, big companies were members of it, and they financed the excavations in the Empire of the Ottomans, which would be now Turkey, Egypt, or Iraq. The Germans brought cultural objects to Berlin, so we have now the 5 world famous museums on Museum Island that we saw on the boat and can offer really famous cultural objects to tourists. Unfortunately, our tourists figures are increasing. More and more are coming to the city. It changed a lot in the last years and will still change. And I hope also you enjoyed the city of Berlin. Now we are very close to the palace, Charlottenburg, Charlotte's Castle. This is also the name of that place where we are, the district, Charlottenburg. And we can still see that Baroque palace of 1699. We feel like in the boat, Kai. Our driver drives fast. So the palace is to the left. It's a very long building actually. Sophie Charlotte lived there. It was a summer palace. The Berlin palace was further right in Old Berlin. And she was the, you know, first queen of Prussia, who came from actually the House of Hanover. Founded the Royal Academy of Art and Sciences together with Leibniz, the famous mathematician who was her personal teacher in Hanover. And if you still go to Petersburg, you will see the Amber Room in Catherine's Court. Maybe you will see the Amber Room in Catherine's Court, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody have heard about the Amber Room, right? Which was reconstructed in Russia. But just to remind you, it was made here in Berlin. The Amber Room, the original one, the one that disappeared. It's a big mystery about the original. It was made here in very early 18th century. It was supposed to be in this palace on your right. It was made for this palace actually. But Sophie Charlotte's son, the Soldiers' King, presented it to Peter I in Russia. And they, of course, how the Russians are, extended it and made it 3 times bigger. And then the Germans invaded Russia, Soviet Union in 1941 and took the Amber Room to Königsberg, which is now Kaliningrad in Russia. And there. Königsberg was here, belonging to Prussia. In Königsberg it disappeared. And nobody knows where the original Ember Room is, but the Russians made a very good job in completely reconstructing the Ember Room. 3 times bigger than it's supposed to be. So you will enjoy that when you see it in Kathrin's Court near Petersburg. It's about the time of Peter I when the Charlottenburg Palace was built in 1699. Completely destroyed in the war, almost completely, only facades were left, rebuilt, and then furnitures and paintings were brought back. It's a museum today. So this is where you can still take a photo for a couple of minutes, but before you go out, ladies and gentlemen, because we end the tour here, I would like to thank you very much for your attention, for your interest, for coming to Berlin. I hope you enjoyed that day here in Berlin. Enjoy your further cruise. I wish you good weather, better weather than here, more sun, and good guides also. Yeah, thank you very, very much. Goodbye. Enjoy the further cruise. Just a couple of minutes, so 5 minutes for taking a photo here, but when you get off, be careful, it's a bicycle lane here. Can be dangerous.
41 hast du ja. Ja, alles klar. Danke. Schau mal die Leuchten. Ich bin nicht an der
Leuchte. Toma 5 minutos para sacar fotos.
No, yo no voy a bajar. Papá se durmió. Baja tú nomás para el palacio.
Ya. Su tonta planta nuclear con Siemens. No,
se nota que es vapor.
Es vapor.
No tiene montaña hasta la parte sur de los Alpes. Peligrosa la calzada. Too much.
porque no se ve tanto congestión de autos, se veían pocos autos dentro del centro.
Tiene razón.
Mucha bicicleta.
Es una buena manera de lograr que no se
Mm.
Don't make yeah, but inside, yeah, I think it's better. Yeah, this is not the nicest I think that you don't need a shower now.
We took her on the ship.
No, tomorrow no. I'm working on Friday and Sunday again. So time to rest. But I have to go to my German school. German school? Yeah, every day.
You already had a show.
Yeah. Should you have it? Yeah, better. Hello. So we tried to make these showers.
Give you a mini shower.
Yeah, my God. No? Yeah. Yeah. Vuelvo. O sea, que no quiere más.
No.
Yo
¿Quieres tú más?
quiero.
Entonces ahora, este es el primer vaso. Este es el mejor. Pero ya. Lo importante es que no me pare ahora. Que
Eso.
Gracias.
de nada.
Hubiera sido de caliente, sí. No se ríe. Como la Carolina que se ría.
Mucho bosque.
I leave like a bottle here. Yeah. If you need more. Yeah. Yeah. I leave one bottle here if you need more water.
Tengo.
Te va a hacer ir al baño corriendo. No, pero aquí no hay que ocupar el baño hasta...
German, but I'm not. Sorry. So, I like to introduce myself as your friend of the day. I will stay here all the day with you. It's quite a long excursion today, so we have time to become friends, okay? My duty today with you is go to Berlin. Once we arrive in Berlin, pick up our guide, because I'm not actually your guide, I'm here to take care about you. But then we have our official guide directly in Berlin. We stay with the guide more or less 6 hours in Berlin, and then we come back again. It takes, oh yeah, I have to ask you first to fasten your seatbelt. I think you have in the middle of the two seats. Yeah. It's mandatory just on the highway. Then when we are in Berlin, you don't have to use that. So this way to Berlin takes more or less 3 hours. Everything is good. And we make a comfort stop in the middle, more or less, okay? To go to the toilet, to rest a little bit. Okay. So during this way, I have some information for you. I have Berlin maps, so I can show you where we go. And I have water, and a little breakfast as well, and I have the coffee. So, perfect. Everything is here, okay? First of all, the temperature is okay? Yeah? If it's not, just tell me, we check, okay? We have one toilet on board, where there are the stairs in the back. There is a door on the left side. This is a toilet. But as we stop to go to the toilet, it's better if we wait, because the driver doesn't have really time to clean it and change it. So it's better if we can wait for the stop. It's better that we wait, just for real emergency. Okay. So now we are in Warnemünde. This is Warnemünde, and this is the port of this Rostock city. Warnemünde is the typical German words. There are long words, and it is like that because are two words together. It's long because two words together. And Warne is the name of the river that is crossing Rostock, and it's going to the Baltic Sea, and the name of the river is Warnov. So Warne. And Munde means mouth. So like the mouth of the river that is going to the Baltic Sea. Here, this part of the Baltic Sea for German people is known like Ostsee. So I mean East Sea. Why east? Because then I will show you, I will pass through the bus with maps, so it's easier to understand where we are. But we are in the part of Germany that is really close to Poland, so it's the east side of Germany. Okay. We are really in the north of Germany, really northeast now. Okay. And we are in the part that was before the GDR, so the communist side. Okay. Rostock is the main city here in the Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. That is the region where we are, in the state where we are. Is the main one, but has only 200,000 people living there, and is the biggest one. In this part of Germany there are not so many people. This depends on their past, and on the fact that all the most important cities are in the south of Germany, like Frankfurt, München, Heidelberg, Stuttgart. All of them, they are in the south. Here we are in the north. So you will see that from here to Berlin, we have just landscape, land, nothing else, agriculture, 100%. There are no cities between Rostock and Berlin. And this is almost 230 kilometers. So it's quite long, but no cities in the middle. I have some like bureaucracy stuff to do with you, and I have a list from the ship where you have to put from each person, so no families, but each person has to put the name and the surname and the cabin number, because from on board they want to know who is on this bus. So the paper is passing by, I give you the pen. So you are 40. If someone is not there, I will know that. Okay? Based on tourism during the summer, we had a lot of cruise ships among Warnemünde, Wismar, Hamburg. So the main ports over there, we have maybe 4 or 5 ships each day. So it's a really big part of the economy during the summer, the tourism. And then we are in Warnemünde, where there are a lot of nice beach. And this is the typical weekend stop for German people. Maybe from Berlin, from the south, they come here when the weather is nice. And when it's not so cold, they come here to enjoy maybe a weekend. This is a region that is dedicated to tourism. And then they have other resources like the university in Rostock. The University of Rostock is one of the oldest one in the Baltic Sea. So a lot of German guys, when they have to choose to which university go, they come here because of the history of the university. It's really important. So Rostock is a quite young city because of the university. And then they have natural resources like the land for agriculture, for fruit, for vegetables, for wood as well. And then here we have a lot of wind. As you understand before, no? Just going out from the ship to arrive to the bus, did you feel the wind? It was quite hard. Yeah, every day here it's really windy. So they take a lot of energy with the wind machine. You will see. During our way, we see just a lot of wind machines. And this is really nice because it's a way to take energy in a natural way. So all the irrigation, they use energy, but natural energy for the irrigation of the land. It's a really green state, the Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. Then I will show you the map. And all the coast side of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern is a natural park protected by the state of Germany, because it has a really nice ambient, really nice beaches, and it's really like unusual place because the land is like going up and down of the sea. It's not like normal beach. So it's a really amazing place. Maybe no one can think about Germany and beach of Germany, but actually it's a really nice place. So I was looking at our program of today, and we will see a lot of important spots of Berlin. Then I will give you the Berlin maps, and we see together where we are going. And it's really nice because just in one day we can see most of the most important part of it, like the cathedral. We're going to have like a cruise on the River Spree that it's really nice because it's exactly in the city center. And then we go to the Checkpoint Charlie, Berlin Wall, Brandenburg Gate, so perfect. We are going to see everything. It's a really nice program. Then we have as well a lunch in a typical German restaurant. That's why I will come back later to you to ask if some of you has like problem like allergy or want like vegetarian plate, something like that. So we can advise on time the restaurant, and they can prepare something special for you. Okay, but normally at the restaurant we have like a German menu. So they have or salad or soup at the beginning, and then a lot of sausages, you know, currywurst. And then we have the Apfelstrudel, the best part. And then for sure you can have a beer, or more than one. So when we stop, normally there are two options. Or there is a woman in charge of it that's taking money and maybe give you back if it's not the correct amount. Or there is a machine. Two versions. Depends on where we stop. And normally is between 50 cents, euro cents, and 70. So to avoid long line because everyone is looking for the money, maybe you don't know them because you're not using normally euro, maybe just start to look at it. If you need help, I can help you looking for which cents are the correct one. We need or 50 or 70, okay? And everywhere, like when, for example, you have an hour of free time during the day, discussion, if you go to the toilet and you are not a guest of a bar or a restaurant, you have to pay the toilet if you want to go. Always like 50 cents or 70 cents, okay?
No hay nada.
I deliver you your breakfast. Maybe I know that you already had your breakfast, maybe you don't want the breakfast now, but what can I suggest personally to do is we have our lunch at 2 o'clock maybe. So if you don't want it now, maybe keep, like normally have an apple, a cake, keep that with you, because maybe 2 o'clock is quite far away and during the day you can eat something, okay? guide and to start our tour. But as I promised before, it's time to German lesson. Are you awake? Okay, that's nice that I'm speaking German, but okay, I have here with me a paper that then I show you so you can also read it. That is the best part. But now we can learn together some simple words. What I can say, so you can say as well. So how they say hello? Hello. So really close. But in the morning, Guten Morgen. Yeah, but Guten Morgen, morgen is morning. So just the first hours of the day. Now it's already quite late, so we can say Guten Tag. Tag is day. So Guten Tag. And when the guide is coming, all together we can say Guten Tag. So she can understand really easily that we are a nice group. Yeah. And then, how they say thank you? Danke or the Dankeschön is like, yeah, like thank you. Yeah. And then, you are welcome. Bitte oder bitteschön. Perfect, you know what I mean. But the best one is goodbye. Auf Wiedersehen. Okay, perfect. And now one of the most difficult, how they say excuse me. But you know more than me what I'm doing. Entschuldigen Sie. Perfect. Perfect.
We didn't hear it.
Kai. How much? Wie viele? Wie viele?
Excuse me. We cannot hear the back.
And money? How they say money? No, you don't know.
Excuse me.
Excuse me, entschuldigen Sie. Entschuldigen Sie. See? And money? Geld. Geld. So. Ja, was kostet es? Oh, wie viel kostet? Ja. Sehr gut. So, now I'll give you my present, my German present, and you can read it, okay? You can see that it's the end of the season because a lot of babies try to, like, eat my paper. So, officially, willkommen. Willkommen in Berlin.
Willkommen.
Okay, welcome. Yeah, we made it. Yeah. So in a few minutes on our right hand side we can see already the Spree River, the one that we are going to visit later with our boat. And in a few minutes as well we are going to know our guide.
Guten Tag. Wie geht's? Es geht mir gut. Dankeschön. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to all of you here in Berlin, the old and new capital of Germany. Yeah, I'm Tatjana. Tatjana Rossa is my name. It doesn't sound very German, I know, but I am. Tatjana, East German actually. I grew up on the eastern part of Germany and came to the eastern part of Berlin, this former Soviet sector, 2 years before the wall came down. So I saw the west of the city, where you are also, only after the wall came down in 1989. But then I saw the development of Berlin to a very exciting modern metropolis that we would like to introduce to you today. We have actually all the main sites on our schedule, but you might be hungry. So we go to lunch, to our lunch venue first. Right? We are a little bit far away from there, so we go here from the west of Berlin. You are in the former British sector, West Berlin. The district is called Charlottenburg. Charlotte's Castle is the translation of Charlottenburg. To the very center of the city where our restaurant is. It's a Nolle restaurant, so you have very German, Berlin style, family style food. With a soup as a starter, and then they have the sausages and sauerkraut and pork meat and fried potatoes, these things, and an Apfelstrudel with vanilla sauce as a dessert. Good. I better sit down here and continue sitting.
Oh, thank you.
This is the Spree River here on your right and left. Spree, S-P-R-E-E. This is the river that we will see again and again. And on your right you see the palace. This is Charlotte's Castle, Charlottenburg. The place was named after this palace, Charlottenburg. It's often that you have palaces, or actually in the beginning fortresses, a burg, fortress, castle, and then the place is named. So Hamburg, Magdeburg. Here we are in Charlottenburg, which used to be an independent town until 1920. and was then incorporated. Before 1920, Berlin was far left from us, so we go to the old town, what is now the very center of the city. Charlotte's Castle was named after Sophie Charlotte, the first queen of Prussia. You are here in a former kingdom called Prussia. Berlin was the capital of it. Kings were ruling. They finally became German emperors in 1871. So Berlin became the capital of entire Germany, 1871. The Hohenzollern dynasty was the most important dynasty in Germany. You know, there were kingdoms in Bavaria, Saxony, Hanover, Württemberg, but the Prussian kingdom was finally the biggest, with the biggest army also, and the Prussian king was chosen to be a German emperor, 1871, and 2 more emperors followed. The last one, William II, lost the First World War for Germany, 1918, and a republic was founded, the monarchy abolished. So this is the dynasty. Sophie Charlotte came from the House of Hanover, and she married a Prussian king, the very first one who made Prussia. He founded the kingdom 1701, Friedrich I, and she, Sophie Charlotte, came from the Hanoverian kingdom, and her brother became king in England. The one who didn't speak any word of English but ruled England. It was George I. You might know the Hanoverians are actually still ruling. The Windsors are that family. We end the tour at Charlotte's Castle in the very end, and you can still take a photo, and then I'll show it to you from the front facade. It's a beautiful Baroque building which is very much destroyed in the war and rebuilt, and then all the furnitures and paintings by Antoine Watteau, 18th century furnitures, Baroque, Rococo, could be rescued in cellars in the Second World War and were brought back into the palace, which is a museum today. Because the Hohenzollern lost their property after 1918, when the Republic was founded, the palaces became state property and museums in 1918 already. So the royal family got reparations, but of course not according to the value of these palaces they once owned. And Berlin is full of palaces, and so is Potsdam. Potsdam is near Berlin in the southwest and has 14 summer palaces of the royals, and worth a visit. But we see Berlin today, where the main ruling palace was, the big Baroque building, which was destroyed in the war, but it will be rebuilt. We have a big construction there. The Baroque palace will be rebuilt. I show to you where that was and where it will be again. On your left, you see the Town Hall of Charlottenburg district. On your left, it's an Art Nouveau style building from 1905, Art Nouveau style. And you know, Charlottenburg was an independent town, but it's now just a district, one of 12. And we have 12 district mayors, and the Charlottenburg district mayor has his office here. We have one Lord Mayor who rules the entire city from the central Berlin, from the Red Berlin City Hall, which is in the center, and the center is in front of us. The district Mitte is also the old part. This is where our lunch venue is. So the Brandenburg Gate is in the middle of the city. It's further in front of us, which was the entrance to Old Berlin in the 18th century. So this didn't belong to Berlin until 1920. You are in one of the largest cities of the world. You see the distances. You came from the very northwest through Tegel Forest in the northwest. You came through the former French sector, by the way, arrived here in the former British sector. So these are long distances already. And we have 4 forests, 50 lakes, 35% is water and green area. Also a lot of inner city parks. And Berlin is larger than New York in area. Here on your left you see the Scientology Church. It's the European headquarters of Scientology that we have here in Berlin. Look left, the Scientology Kirche. Kirche is a German word for church. Tom Cruise was here about 6 years ago, and he did the film Valkyrie in Berlin. Where's to be seen, by the way? It's about this assassination against Hitler in 1924. Done by Stauffenberg. He plays the Stauffenberg rule and produced the film, and there was a big controversy about him producing the film because he's a higher ranked functionary at Scientology, and he made contact here secretly at night, as we know. Yeah, the city looked different 25 years ago. It changed amazingly in the last 25 years, especially the former Soviet sector. They had the very center where the historical sites are, and everything was renewed, and they invested a lot. Very modern architecture was built in the last years, especially in the center. You are in the west of the city. That didn't change so much because everything was in a good shape when the wall came down. East Berlin was run down a lot and had to be renewed. and it changed completely and is now partly more attractive than the west of the city. Here you see buildings from the 1950s and 60s, all built after the Second World War, that destroyed Berlin a lot to about 70%. So before the Second World War, Berlin looked still different. This is Ernst Reuter Square. It's a roundabout on the east-west axis. It's a very long street that leads to the right, to the far west, right-hand side, to the Olympic Stadium, which would be far right in the west, built in 1936 under Hitler's reign for the 11 Olympic Summer Games that happened in Berlin. 36 were when the Afro-American athlete Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals. This is still there. It was modernized, but it's still the building. Ernst Reuter Square is on the east-west axis. We are going eastwards. The flags on your left, you see the European flag, the blue one with the yellow stars, the German flag, and also the Berlin flag. It's the white one with the 2 red stripes and the Berlin bear in the middle. This is our coat of arms, the Berlin bear. You get him in souvenir shops. By the way, we have opportunity for these things at Checkpoint Charlie. That is what we would like to show you, the open air kind of museum, the only of 9 checkpoints, which became a museum. So that is where we will go. We show you also a piece of the wall, which is very close there. We have remnants of the Berlin Wall. You can get off and take a photo. And of course we will see the Brandenburg Gate. You can go through it. It was not possible for 28 years because it was in no man's land. That's where the wall was. We see the government quarter with the Reichstag, old and new parliament, and also Angela Merkel's offices of the parliament. This is also where we go on board of a ship. We do a little cruise after lunch, so then you can see the city from our Spree River. Right inside you see now the main building of the University for Technologies. The building on your right was built in the 1960s. Here was an older building, a beautiful big one, just destroyed in the war. It was already a college for technologies when it was in Charlottenburg, late 19th century. On your right you see some older buildings of it. Certain Geiger invented the Geiger counter here, and Heinrich Hertz was a famous physicist for frequencies. Albert Einstein, who came to Berlin in 1914, lectured here once in a while, but he was actually the director of the Emperor William Society for Physics. After the war, it became a university for technologies. Now with about 30,000 students, we have 4 universities. Now we leave Charlottenburg, and here at the canal we see sculptures at the Charlottenburg Gate. If you look left, you see the bronze statue of Sophie Charlotte, left-hand side. Sophie Charlotte is at the Charlottenburg Gate to be seen. This was now like an exit out of Charlottenburg, and we would go towards Old Berlin. But now it's all Berlin. If you look right and left, you still see the street lights. On your right and left, the streetlights which were designed by Albert Speer, Hitler's favorite architect, because the street was actually widened and lengthened under Hitler's reign and was a part of the Germania project. Speer and Hitler wanted to rebuild Berlin and to rename it to be the world's capital. Germania was supposed to be finished in 1950. These were the plans. In 1939 it was officially opened with big military parades, and Mussolini from Italy was invited, who saw the brand new streetlights. That's why they are not here anymore. They are in Rome. Those who were here, right and left, were brought to Rome. Hitler presented 50 of the streetlights to Mussolini on Via Veneto in Rome today. So the Victory Column in front of us was not here. It was built where the parliament was later built. Already in 1873, there where the Reichstag building is. Only in 1939, it was relocated to that roundabout in front of you under Hitler's reign to have a view object on that east-west axis. It's to be seen from a distance of about 10 kilometers, and one segment was even added, 1939, only to make it even higher, and the Victory Column, the Victory Goddess, stands even higher. It's a Victory Goddess, Victoria, on top. You could go upstairs and have a beautiful view from the observation platform. But it was actually built for the victories of the Prussian army against neighbor countries in the 19th century. Called the Unification Wars also. Under Otto von Bismarck, who was the president of the Kingdom of Prussia, Denmark tried to get Schleswig-Holstein in the north, and Schleswig-Holstein at the North Sea was united with Prussia, so the Prussian army helped out and defeated the Danish in 1864. So the lowest gilded cannons around the Victory Column are Danish war trophies. Then the big kingdom in the north, Prussia, together with some northern counties, fought against the South German kingdoms, against Bavaria, Hanover, Saxony, because they didn't want what Otto von Bismarck planned. They didn't want to become a part of a big empire. This is what Otto von Bismarck planned, to merge the German counties and kingdoms to make it one country. It was more or less one country, but you had different currencies, you had to pay tolls in between the counties. The Germans became very nationalistic when Napoleon could easily conquer these counties and kingdoms in 1806. He was in Berlin also, and dreamed from the old strengths of the Middle Ages, when it was the Holy Roman Empire of the Middle Ages. But it fell apart in smaller, weaker counties. Some of them became kingdoms, and the bourgeois movement dreamed of a unification. But the revolution from 1848 failed. So Otto von Bismarck did that later politically from above and could still rescue the monarchy. But you know, he had to fight against neighbor countries before. Austria united with the South German kingdoms, and the Prussians defeated them all. And the middle cannons, gilded cannons, are Austrian cannons. And then another neighbor declared war to Prussia, France, in 1870. And the Prussians also won the war against France. That was 1871, a very important year in the German history. Still there in Versailles, in the mirror hall of the palace of Ludwig XIV, Otto von Bismarck proclaimed the German Empire, 1871. So he merged 18 counties, 4 kingdoms, and introduced the Reichsmark, one currency for all of them. The tolls were abolished, low income taxes were introduced, and the promotion period began. Berlin was very successful in this time of the industrialization. And again, not the Bavarian and not the Hanoverian or Saxon king became emperor, the Prussian king became emperor, and he was now ruling entire Germany. That's why Berlin became the capital of entire Germany in 1871. And not to forget, a parliament was founded, 1871, very important year. And the victories over the countries, neighbor countries, were like a condition for the foundation of the German Empire. That's why the Victory Column was actually built only somewhere else. Look left, Bellevue Palace is like our White House, built in the late 18th century, under a Prussian king, and it's now the office of our federal president, who receives state guests. The President of the United States, Barack Obama, was here last year in June, just one night, and visited our federal president. And he is East German, like our federal chancellor is. Angela Merkel is a federal chancellor. She does the decision. It's the most important position, and a federal president is more representing a country. Sometimes you call him the handshaker, so he can't do many political decisions. This is Joachim Gauck, also an East German politician. He used to be an East German priest, held sermons for more human rights in East Germany, very courageous personality. So 2 East Germans are ruling Germany now. Right inside the Tiergarten Recreation Park, it's our central park, but it used to be outside. In the 18th century, we would sit in a horse carriage and would go towards Berlin only. And the royals came from Berlin through the Brandenburg Gate on horseback, mostly, and were hunting here. And in the 19th century, it was incorporated and it became an English landscape garden, destroyed in the war, and replanted, and now one of the most beautiful inner city parks in the world, the Tiergarten, Garden of Animals. It's also the name of the district. On your left, you see an interesting building which was built in 1957 by Hugh Stubbins, an American architect who tried a new technology at that time, so like concrete and steel, and could shape such a roof, left hand side. That was an attraction in 1957. Berliners called the building Pregnant Oyster. They called it so right when it was finished in 1957, the Pregnant Oyster, or the Americans called it Jimmy Carter's Peanut Smile. The roof collapsed in 1980, and it took 7 years to set it up again. It's now a museum exhibition building. The tower on your left is a bell tower, the dark tower left hand side, a bell tower with 68 bells inside, set up here in 1987. That was already very close to where the wall was. Tiergarten district was still a British, one of 4 British districts, and had a border to the Soviet sector. We are very close to where the wall was. Yeah, this is the government quarter, left-hand side, big spaces. The square of the Republic on your left. This is where the Victory Column actually used to be. From here it was relocated to the roundabout 1939. And the Reichstag is the old and new parliament. Look left. This is the old Parliament building, which was built under the reign of the last Emperor, William II, who didn't like the Parliament much. You know, he called it the Rice Monkey's house. He had never been inside. The one who lost the First World War, and then he better escape to Holland to exile, and the Weimar Republic was proclaimed from here. Now we have the glass dome built by Norman Foster, finished in 1999, and it's again the German Parliament. There's the Parliament's Hall inside. 631 purple colored seats are in the Parliament's Hall, and the roof is on top of it. And we see that later, again, from more closer, and we see the front facade, because this is where our boat leaves from the Spree River, which is left behind the Reichstag. And the Spree, where we go on board later, was no man's land. It was where the border crossed. Right in front of you, from right to left, used to be the wall. So the Reichstag was still on Western territory, but everything in front of us was already Eastern territory, as well as the Brandenburg Gate, which was already on Soviet sector. Look right, you see the Brandenburg Gate? Right inside. Here was the wall which went to the right and to the left. Two walls. Here was the second wall. Here, right and left, was the second wall. There were always two walls in a different distance to each other. So now we are in former East Berlin, but also in the most central district, Mitte. Yeah, this is the old part of the city, which was encircled by a city wall with 18 city gates. The Brandenburg Gate was just one of 18 city gates. There was a Hamburg Gate, Rosenthal Gate, Potsdam Gate. They were all pulled down when the city was extended in the late 19th century. But we see that all in detail after lunch. Also the historical part, after the boat tour, we go to the Brandenburg Gate, and we stop there, and you can walk through and see it from the front side. We saw it from once outside of the city. In front of you, right hand side, there's one older building to be seen. It's behind the trees in a moment. In front of us, right hand side, this was the Embassy of the United States in the German Democratic Republic. It stayed the Embassy of the United States until 6 years ago, because the new one was built 6 years ago, exactly where it used to be before the war. Until 1941. At the Brandenburg Gate is the new Embassy of the United States now, but it was here, look right, this old building across the street on your right. This was the Embassy of the United States in East Germany, right inside. And it stayed the embassy for Germany until 6 years ago. So we are very close to the Nolle restaurant, which was called after a square where it used to be. It was on the western side, on Nollendorf Square in the district of Schöneberg. But after the reunification, the restaurant moved over to East Berlin, to the middle of the city. But still has the name Nolle after Nollendorf Square. Again, they have a daily soup as a starter for you, and then homemade Berliner Rissels, and the small grilled sausages with sauerkraut and potatoes, and they have roasted meat on a spit with beer sauce, vegetables and roasted potatoes, and again a warm apfelstrudel with vanilla sauce as a dessert. They also have ice water on the table for you, and then one drink is included. Yeah, you can order a soft drink or a glass of beer or a glass of wine, and of course coffee and tea after lunch is also included. We have there about an hour, so I think that we are finishing at 3 and can continue our tour. Nolle restaurant is in Friedrichstraße. This is where we go now, to the left. This is Friedrichstraße, going right and left. It leads far to the right to Checkpoint Charlie, where we will be later. This is Friedrichstraße, here in former East Berlin. Changed a lot. The restaurant is very close to the end of the world for East Germans, because the station Felix Street is in front of us. In front of you see a city train station. Left hand side is a big building of the station, and this was the end of the world for East Germans. There was a border checkpoint. West Berliners, West Germans could come, were checked up and could visit East Berlin, but opposite it was not possible. So our lunch venue is under the tracks of the train here on the right. So it's a little bit dark here under the tracks. I hope you don't mind that. We get off here to the right, and then we go back and left, and I guide you to the restaurant. Yeah? So please come.
Están dando la bienvenida, Fila.
Nos buscan a nosotros.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the lunch here in the Nolla restaurant under the tracks of the city train.
Very, very good.
Glad to hear that noise. We go to the next restaurant now. Find other food. No, we go to the boat. The boat is expecting us at the Spree River. That's where we go.
Yes. Ten a mano tu cámara. Ten a mano la máquina fotográfica. Hay que sacarla. Porque se te olvida tomar fotos. No, está en el bolsillo de afuera. Aquí, afuera. Ahí afuera.
So this is the very center of the city. It's a historical part of Berlin. A long time Berlin was not much bigger than this center. Mitte is the name of the district, and here on your right you see the Humboldt University on your right, which was opened in 1810. 28 German Nobel laureate scientists are connecting with that. Also Albert Einstein, who lectured here. Max Planck was here. Robert Koch, the very first Nobel laureate scientist, 1901, who was Nobel laureate. And very close are the museums of Museum Island. In front of us is the island, which is actually shaped by the river Spree, that comes from the far right and begins to branch out, and we see the island in front of us, and the new museum is to be seen in front of you. Across this arm of the river is a construction site. There is a new building under construction, as an entrance building. And the new museum on your right was reopened 2010. It was a war ruin 10 years ago. It was just reopened 2010. There's Nefertiti is back. Nefertiti, Akhenaton, the daughter's busts, Tutankhamun's depictions, Akhenaton's son, and the excavations from Troy. And here on your right you see the Pergamon Museum. You see it's a big UNESCO project. They are restoring and reconstructing a lot. So the entrance is in the moment on this in the side wing. The right wing would show the processional street and the Ishtar Gate of Babylon that the Germans found deep in the center, the desert south of Baghdad around 1900, and brought the Ishtar Gate here. The Ishtar Gate was built under Nebuchadnezzar II, 6th century before Christ. You read about him in the Bible. Yeah, he was the one who destroyed the first temple in Jerusalem and brought the Jews to Babel. So it's all described, it's known that we have one of his city gates in Berlin, the Ishtar Gate. And the altar of Pergamon from what is now Turkey, from the 2nd century before Christ. And right inside the Bode Museum, this is from 1904. And Wilhelm von Bode was a famous museum director, right inside with the dome on top. with wooden sculptures that actually belonged to churches. Yeah, like Jesus on a cross, Maria with the tiled altars from South Germany, France, Spain, a lot from the Italian Renaissance, Della Robbias, Donatellos. That is what we have in the Bode Museum with a beautiful copper dome. But that is what we will see again from the boat. All former East Berlin. Berlin had 20 districts and they were divided into the control sectors. 8 of 20 districts were a Soviet sector, and this very center of the city, the old part, was one of the 8 districts of the Russians. But they all left finally in 1994, so we don't have militaries, only German military in Berlin, and also not in Germany anymore. Germany was divided into zones, and entire Berlin was in the Soviet zone, by the way, which was then DDR. That's why the wall had to be built around the capitalist part, with a free market and the Deutschmark. That was the western part, which was finally encircled by the wall. It was within East Germany, actually. But I'll tell you later more about this. So a lot of new buildings on your left here, the modern architecture. There was still space in the middle of the city, especially when the wall came down. The center became the center of the entire city again, and the value of the land increased a lot. So a lot of new blocks on your left. On your right, with the red windows on your right, this is East German architecture from the 1980s. And East Germany, East Berlin had a big variety theater. It's a Fiddingtown Palace on your right. You see that? It's a big variety theater with 1,900 seats inside, with a very good variety performances. On your right, Friedrichstadtpalast, Fiddingtown Palace right inside. We go into Max Reinhardt Street. Max Reinhardt was a famous theater director, and he owned an empire of theaters in a time when theaters were privately owned and didn't need any tax money to survive. This is not the case anymore in Germany, and especially not in Berlin. Max Reinhardt was Jewish. He left his entire empire of theaters to the Nazi state and made it to the United States. He still immigrated. So we have a Reinhardt Street. He also founded the Max Reinhardt School for Acting. Marlene Dietrich learned acting there when she was still in Berlin. This is where we are, Reinhardt Street, and right inside you see a bunker of the Second World War, one of those bunkers that stood above the street level, and that couldn't be blown up because there were living houses too close. It's now in private ownership. The private cellar of the one who lives on top of it, right up, is his penthouse. Mr. Burroughs shows his private art exhibition in the bunker on your right. So here was the wall. These 2 blocks on your right and left stand where one wall was, we would be now in between two walls. So one was behind us from right to left, and the main wall was in front of us from right to left at the bank of the Spree River. So we are about to cross the Spree River, which was still Eastern Territory, and only the other bank was West Berlin. So only when we cross the Spree River by a new bridge, we would be back in the west of the city. The bridge in front of you had to be built new. The old one was blown up because you couldn't get to the bank of the Spree River. It was no man's land, but already East Berlin territory. So the bridge where we go now was built by Santiago Calatrava from Spain. That was an old one. Left hand side you see two bridges connecting the Parliament's Library, left at the other bank, and left hand side the Paul-Löbe-Haus, an office block for parliamentarians, and the blue building on your left, this is the kindergarten for children of parliamentarians and government officials, and this is where we go on board of our ship. It's very close to the government quarter where we are. Right hand side you might see a building looking like a big cube. Right hand side, that is Angela Merkel's office. This is where she rules Germany. But be patient, when we leave from here, we see it from more closer. And then we go to the Reichstag, that you still see it from the front facade. On your right, you see the cylinder-shaped parts of Paul-Löbe-Haus. There are small, round meeting rooms for the committees of the parliament. Everything is new. This would be still on Western territory. The Parliament's Library is across the river in front, was on Eastern territory, so the new government quarter connects East and West Berlin. We get off, you only need what you need now for about half an hour. Boat ride, we have restrooms on board, and if you like to order a drink there, which is possible, then you have to pay for it, just that you know, yeah? So please follow me.
Son las oficinas del Parlamento. Y creo que también la Angela Merkel trabaja por ahí. Spree. Spree.
So, welcome on board, everyone. And so, the bus number 9. My name is Sabine, and I'm the guide, actually, of bus number 8. So, welcome to our little River Spree boat cruise here today. If you want, you might order some drinks here on the boat, but again, is it only euro or can they pay in dollars? You can also pay in dollars here on the boat as a special service to you. But don't remember, along Kurfürstendamm later on with the shopping break, the stores around there, they don't accept dollars. It must be euro or credit card. Okay. So the tour has taken us straight through the government quarters of Berlin. So what we've seen from the road here so far, the Reichstag, well, we're going to pass by here as well, but as I said, the Reichstag is way too small. It's only 17,000 square meters. So the government of Germany, there are over 600 members of parliament. Each single one has a huge staff of employees around. They all needed office spaces that the Reichstag wouldn't provide them. So everything around the Reichstag, on the right and left hand side here now, this was all built from 95 till 99. And the situation was here quite interesting, because one bank of the river, one on the left hand side, that was the eastern part of Berlin, and the river bank on the right hand side, that was West Berlin already. And again, you find those white crosses over here, on each single one where the person is named on. These are all people who tried to escape from east to west, and they did not succeed by doing so. They had been cut, they had been killed, they had been shot, like trying to reach the other bank of the river. Even in 1989, the year the wall came down in November, until November in 89, 19 people had been killed along the Berlin Wall. Can you believe that? 19, or still in the year the wall came down in 89. Well, the building on the left-hand side, this is, by the way, the library of the parliament. It's the third biggest in the world after Tokyo and Washington. Here in Berlin, within the Marie Elisabeth Lüders building. And we're heading into the eastern direction of Berlin. I was already asked, what is that big tall tower over there? This is located directly at Alexander Square, the eastern center of Berlin. And it's the TV tower. But before, we're going to see that better later on, before we reach the eastern center, please take a look. On the right hand side, the red building, which is the first public TV station of Berlin. This is where all the main news come from. It's the RRD, the first German governmental TV station. And next to it, we find buildings where you can tell that we are now in the former east of Berlin. It's the typical Eastern architecture, these square-cut buildings. This is, or was, the Eastern idea how to rebuild East Germany quickly and inexpensively after the Second World War. These are the so-called pre-manufactured concrete plate buildings, or simply the Platte as we called it. Honestly, I don't find that big difference to the post-war architecture in Western Germany. That was also in the 1950s and 60s, pretty much square-cut, simple and boring, you know. There's just one big difference between the Platte buildings and the one on the western side. The Platte buildings, they do have very thin walls. You can actually hear what the neighbor is saying, what is right up front, it's again the station Friedrichstraße, which was a very important one, since this was where also formerly a checkpoint was located. Later on the tour, you'll be seeing the world famous checkpoint Charlie. And the checkpoint Charlie was only one out of 14 checkpoints along the Berlin Wall. There had been several ones. And the one here at Friedrichstraße, that was the one for the West Berliners. Remember I said, like, this is also where the Palace of Tears is located, because this is where you had to say goodbye. Today it's just like a regular station. Regional trains stop here. The S train, S stands for schnell, meaning fast train. It's not the metro. You also find a metro here with the Friedrichstraße, but up here you find the S train, which is like a very fast train, and the fastest connection from Alexander Square, the eastern center, to the western center, the station Zoo, would be by S train. It's only 15 minutes. You will never make that distance within a car, you know, so that's the fastest connection. And in general, the public transport system in Berlin is probably one of the best in the world. So actually in the city you don't need a car. Only half of the population even own a car, you know, because the public transport system is so good. And I was talking about Berlin being the city that never sleeps, that there is no closing time, and on Friday and Saturday nights the most important subway lines, they run non-stop 24 hours for the party crowd of Berlin. So don't drink and drive, just take the metro home. And see, as you can see, you find plenty of bars and restaurants along the river here. And this again is the district of Berlin-Mitte, where I said like this is the fancy part of Berlin. This is the expensive part. This is where you find all the nice restaurants and stuff. And also like a vivid nightlife scene just around the corner. And again, this bridge is crossing over Friedrichstraße here now, so down to the right-hand side. This is where we just had lunch, yeah, just to get an idea where we are. And also, you find all the shopping opportunities down to the right-hand side. And maybe you also figured out already from the bus on the tour so far that Berlin is a very green city. There are trees all over. It's not only the Tiergarten, which is that huge inner city park, it's green in total. So each single side street more or less is covered with trees. I'm telling you this because mainly people have the imagination that Berlin, especially when the wall was still around, was somehow a concrete jungle where you would see the Berlin Wall from every single perspective. Not exactly my childhood memory. I grew up in an inner city western district, and where I was living, where I went to school, I've never seen the Berlin Wall. Plus, Berlin was always, even then, a very green city. The Tiergarten was there already, and all the other trees here as well. So 40% of the area is actually covered with trees. And here we go. Now you find the TV tower right up front. It's the tallest building in entire Germany. It was built here in the middle of the Eastern Center by the Eastern government in 1969, and in these days it was Walter Ulbricht as being the head of the Eastern government. And he was very proud of having the tallest building in entire Germany being erected in the Eastern Center. And he always announced the TV tower as being a masterpiece of East German engineering, although mainly Swedish engineers had been involved in the building. Anyway, you find in the middle of the TV tower the highest sightseeing spot of Berlin within the steel ball. This is where you find the restaurant at 207 meters height. You sit in the restaurant, the platform turns itself over 360 degrees within half an hour. And this is where you overview Berlin into all directions. This one is called or nicknamed the TV asparagus. You probably figure out why. And as you can see, there's a sun reflection with the TV tower. Within the steel ball, the sun reflects, and that might be seen as a Christian cross. But see, the government of the East and the churches, they didn't get along too well. So Walter Ulbricht, the head of the Eastern government, he was so angry about the sun reflection on his prestige TV tower. And the people in the East, they said like, see, that's Vatican's revenge, the sun reflection on top of the TV tower. Next to us on the right-hand side, this is already one of the 5 museums at the Museums Island of Berlin. This is the most important cultural spot of Berlin. 5 museums that have been built within 100 years of construction from 1828 till 1930. This is all listed as being a World Heritage. 5 museums where you could actually walk through the entire history of mankind, starting with the prehistoric museum and up to the 19th century. Next to us we find the Bode Museum, it's the Pergamon Museum, the Old National Gallery, the New Museum, and the Old Museum. This is, by the way, the New Museum where you find the Egyptian collection of Berlin, also with the bust of Nefertiti, the beautiful Egyptian queen. She's here in Berlin with the New Museum, which is one of the major attractions here, of course, at the Museums Island, next to the outer pavilion. So our plan now is to connect those 5 museums underground. I don't know about you. I can only look at 1, maybe 2 museums a day. That's enough on information. I think no one will make it within 1 day. So why connect all this underground? Because in that moment, the Museums Island of Berlin will become bigger than the Louvre in Paris. And see, this is what we're aiming for, to become bigger than the Louvre in the end. So the area on the left-hand side, this could be considered as, let's say, Soho of Berlin. This is where you find a lot of places for amusement, and also quite unique shopping places. Let's say Berlin designers, they settled here, producing their own clothes, bags, hats, whatsoever. You know, ladies, I have to say it, this is where you find the biggest amount of shoe stores in Germany around the Hackische Markt area, and also you find the Hackische courtyards over there, which is, they're named in every travel book of Berlin, so they're quite famous. 8 combined courtyards, some dedicated to amusement, some shopping, and some people even do living. Oh, now please take a look to the right hand side. This is the biggest church of Berlin. It's the Berlin Cathedral. It was built by the last German emperor, Wilhelm II, in 1905. And this was the church of his family, of the Hohenzollern dynasty. It's big and beautiful. And the Berlin Cathedral always reminds me of, let's say, being little sister or brother of St. Peter's in Rome. But of course, St. Peter's is the most important Catholic church in the world. Here with the Berlin Cathedral, we're talking about a Lutheran church. And that's quite unusual because normally they are built in a simpler way. Not this one here though, because Wilhelm II, our last German emperor, he wanted to show the power and glory of the Hohenzollern family and of Prussia here with his church. And just like with St. Peter's, you can also surround the big green dome on top. As you can see, people actually standing up there. In the basement of the dome, you find the Hohenzollern crypt, where some of the members of the Hohenzollern dynasty lay in destinations, and very beautiful graveyards. So this is where we turned, and we're gonna, you know, heading back towards the government quarters of Berlin. It's the old National Gallery here next to us, by the way, on the left-hand side. And here on the right-hand side you find, just underneath the train tracks, all these kind of places where people go to, especially at night. And this is where you also find Oranienburger Straße, which is pretty close to the Hackische courtyards, and this is where you find one of the nightlife spots here in Berlin. And also the district of Berlin-Mitte used to be the Jewish quarter of Berlin, meaning that until 1933 about 190,000 Jews have been living in this part of Berlin. Of course, then the number decreased heavily, but still we find a big synagogue here along Oranienburger Straße. So if you take a look down to the right-hand side, you might see the top. It's a golden dome on top of the new synagogue here at Oranienburger Straße. So you might just take a glimpse over to it, possibly see like a tiny little corner of it. And then also on the right-hand side, you find one of those plenty beach bars along River Spree. I mean, obviously there is no beach in Berlin, so we just take it here. And this is one of those beach bars, and this is also where people go for dancing at night. There's a dance floor, an outside dance floor, open air. There will be a DJ, and then at night you find people dancing salsa, merengue, or tango right over there. Please take a look now to the left-hand side. This is where River Spree, where we are right now, down to the left-hand side, this is where River Spree and the Kupfergraben, where they meet. Because Kupfergraben, this is one of the natural side arms of River Spree. And here you can actually tell, those 5 museums, they are located on an island. Between River Spree and the Kupfergraben, they do form this island over here. And this is why it's named the Museums Island of Berlin. see now, right up front, you find like the big glass dome on top of the Reichstag, and you can see all the people walking to the very top level of it. This is where you can get into by appointment, and every day from 8 till midnight actually. But this is not only for the visitors of the Reichstag, also this dome has a function, because from there they lead daylight to the plenary meeting hall just underneath the glass dome. And even here, what you see on the left now, this is all part of the new government quarters. I mean, it's about 3,000 offices that have been erected here. And then it's like in one tower you find, of course, the German flag on top of the Reichstag, right up front, and then down to the left-hand side, the blue one, that's the European flag. And straight down there, and also next to us, you remember on the right-hand side now, this is the library of the Parliament, and down there we find offices. And when this one opened up in the year 1909, the architect, Mr. Braunfels, he was asked how he is going to cover the facade in the end. Well, he looked at the people strange and he said like, no, why? This is it, I'm done, I'm finished. And then someone said like, yeah, but you know, this is only concrete, isn't it? And he said like, yeah, but don't you know that the concrete is the marble of the 21st century? So, the master had spoken. And I was also asked like, where are those white crosses where the people are named on? Now you find them here on the left-hand side, right next to the river. See? Because this is the former western side. As I said, like the Reichstag was completely located next to the Berlin Wall, but on western ground. And the bank of the river on the right-hand side down here. This is the former east. So meaning that the river itself was the borderline between east and west. Meaning that this was also heavily guarded. Boats had been passing by here every minute. If you take a glimpse into the right-hand side, like within the Paul-Löbe building, you find the chancellery at the very end. So the glass building, you can actually see through the chancellery. And as I said, construction, wherever you go, even straight down there, you find those cranes. It's next to the main station, where offices are built here. On the right-hand side, the rather dark building, it's the house of the press conference. We also find the big conference hall within, where Angela Merkel has to tell all the journalists what's going on. And straight down the river you find already the big glass building, which is the main station of Berlin. It started operating in the year 2006. Remember when the soccer championship, the World Cup, was held in Germany that year? 3 games and the final here in Berlin at the Olympic Stadium. This is when the main station was finished. And 1.7 billion euro had been spent on that station. It all happens on 5 levels, but only with the top level, which is the east-west connection, and only with the basement, which is the north-south connection. This is where the trains are running. The 3 levels in the middle of the station, it's a big shopping mall, you know? You can go shopping, clothes, whatever, dining, everything. And also these shops at the station, they're open on Sundays, because normally the shops and stores are closed on Sundays. In Germany, we have a strong union here in Germany, and they make sure that people don't have to work on Sundays, right? But not with the main station. So this station actually has a capacity for 240,000 people, meaning that 240,000 people are hopping on, off, changing trains here every day, and all kind of train traffic meets here at the station. Long distance trains, regional trains, again those S trains, the fast trains I was talking about, and also you find a metro station here. So the trains leaving from the station into the southern direction, they leave from the basement, as I told you. But where, actually? No? You can only see the top level of the station. Meaning that underneath the river, right here, you find the tunnel where the trains are leaving the station. Underneath the river, underneath the Berlin Tiergarten, even underneath Potsdamer Square. And only behind Potsdamer Square those trains would reach daylight here again. So over 3 kilometers they running underground, even here, right here underneath the river. This is actually what we call the band of tie, because two government buildings, they connect the formerly separated parts right here at this spot, from one side of the river to the other. And see, this is where our boat trip actually comes to its end, and meaning that all of us, we're now leaving the boat here again, back to the bus. It's waiting where we had been dropped. It's waiting for us. So this is where we continue the tour, and the next stop would be for both of our groups, the Brandenburg Gate, of course. And this is going to be one of the extended photo stops here on the tour.